everybody. Welcome to One More Round with Josh Norris. I'm very excited today. We have Pamela Wirth. We're going to have a lot of fun today because we're going to talk about health, things that you can do for your personal health, but entrepreneurship. She's an entrepreneur. She's a podcast host just like me. So make sure you subscribe and like this. And welcome, Pamela.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me here. It's fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was great because Zach, actually, who helps produce with Hank, said, hey, you should have Pamela on. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So you've got a pretty unique story. And we were talking just a little bit about it off camera.
Yeah.
But you now own Hello Health, which is a super cool supplement company. But tell us a little bit how all that started because it's unique.
Yeah, so and my vision for what Hello Health is now versus what it will be is kind of dependent upon this story too. So when my son was about 5.5, 6 years old, he went from this perfectly normal child to all kinds of horrific, eyes constantly dilated, devoid of all emotion, and he was diagnosed with OCD, Tourette's, because of the vocalizations, the weird tics, the washing his hands 30, 40 times a day, the way he would enter and exit a room. And then he was also diagnosed with a brain autoimmune disorder. And they said, look, there's really nothing we can do. Why don't we put him on some antipsychotics, Prozac for the depression, and then do IVIG. And I was like, man, I don't like any of those ideas. So
Yeah, that's scary, especially your son was 5. I mean,
yeah,
can
yeah.
only imagine.
So then around the age of 6, I found this neurologist, MD, who thankfully I got in with. That it was through, I don't know if it was through word of mouth or something, but got in with her and she said, hey, let's pull some blood work. The blood work showed he was low in certain vitamin levels, D3, B12, genetic marker, MTHFR, which is super important if about half the population has that, and you've got to remove folic acid from your diet and take a methylfolate on a daily basis so you can absorb your vitamins and minerals correctly. And then he had an active viral infection called CMV, which is like common flu-like symptoms to most people. And then he had high strep titers suggesting an active strep infection, even though he was negative for strep throat, so that can still be a thing. And so between the bacterial infection, the viral infection, and the low vitamin levels, it was like his body was starved. The infection crossed the blood-brain barrier and was causing motor, vocal, and mood disorder. Now this is about a decade ago at this point, and at that time, the doctors still really didn't believe that there was a brain-body connection. The psychiatrist treats the brain, the MD treats the body, and totally different systems. But now, thankfully, there's more and more research coming out about the fact that there is this gut-brain axis and how it does influence so many other things regarding sleep and mood. And thankfully, was really happy to have gotten our hands around that, and here we are today. So
Yeah, and that led to, didn't you say you were making like your own vitamins at home? And
yes.
What's that like? Do you go to like a compound pharmacy or?
It was a combination of a number of different things. And so the doctor said, hey, what you're going to do, I'm going to be able to cure him, but we're going to do blood draws once a quarter. It's going to take about a year. Take him off gluten and sugar, and then there's certain things that he's got to take on a daily basis. And she said, for instance, we have to fix his gut. And I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of a wild idea because I don't know what you're talking about, but sure, I'll follow along. And she said there's 15 probiotics he needs on a daily basis. There's 2 prebiotics he needs to prevent negative overgrowth of bacteria in his gut. He needs D3, he needs methylfolate, he needs oregano for the bacteria, olive leaf extract for the viruses, cinnamon for the fungi, turmeric and frankincense for the antioxidants to detox properly.
Frankincense, I think it was actually the Bible.
Oh my gosh, it's so amazing. It's the most incredible anti-inflammatory.
Yeah, is it?
And so all these things together, including the omegas for inflammation, and sunflower phosphatidylserine is a great thing for those that need to focus. It's naturals from sunflowers. And anyway, all these things together created this perfect, thankfully, thing. And so, and then the blood work kept showing we were going in the right direction. But one of the things, too, that was really impactful and scary for me was, it was really hard to find folks that understood why we were going the road we were going. And so I had like a sister-in-law call CPS on me. I had the pediatrician called the children's hospital. The children's hospital called the pediatrician back, and the pediatrician calls me and says, we're not okay with the way you're treating him. And I'm like, okay, but I don't like the way you're suggesting to treat him either. They have since called and apologized. And then, just making sure that I was connecting with other people going through similar things. So I ended up reaching out through a lot of confidential Facebook groups, which in retrospect today is kind of scary that I threw all that out there, because it's probably not private at all. and then to find other practitioners, OTs, physical therapists. We, as a family, saw a psychologist for a long time because it's not only hard on the kid going through it, and it's not only hard on the parents, but it's also really hard on the sibling. It's like, what the heck's going on here, and where do I fit in the family, and are we afraid of germs? Are germs going to hurt us? It's like all this stuff. So anyway, one of the things that I'm building out in addition to the supplements is this community aspect where people truly in a password protected private manner can communicate with one another, and then they can find practitioners that are also integrative or functional in nature that want to help get to the root of things. So
it's huge. So it's like almost like a forum that people could go on that's password protected, where they got their own username and log in, but they can share ideas. And I think you're right. I mean, putting all that stuff on Facebook, I mean, you wouldn't have thought about it back then. I wouldn't have either.
Yeah.
But, we know that all that data is there and definitely shared.
By the same token, I never would have made it through had I not connected with these other families that were like, hey, don't forget to ask about this. Don't forget to check that.
Totally.
And to keep on going, you just need that encouragement.
Yeah. Well, now, how many kids do you have?
Two teenage boys.
And then your son was 5. How old were they at the time?
So one is 4 years older, so 5 and 9, 6 and 10, right in that range.
Okay. So I can imagine it'd be tough for an older brother to see your younger brother going through that kind of thing. Because I mean, I've a younger brother, and I always looked out for him and tried to. And he's 7 years younger than me, and but he had asthma though. He did have asthma, and he always had to have the breathing machine. And I hated seeing him go through that kind of thing. But that's like next level type stuff. So you said today, I mean, he's thriving and doing well?
Yeah, he's doing great. He's a great athlete, great student.
So did you have any background and knowledge in this kind of stuff, or was it just like a crash course to where
No, I mean, I've always thought I was healthy, and so that was part of the frustrating part too, was I was that mom that was like making homemade meatloaf on Sundays with like sauteed spinach and cut up mushrooms and things and hiding in the meatloaf, and I was like, I thought I was doing a good job, and but it wasn't necessarily my fault, because he just simply wasn't getting the vitamins because of the genetic marker, which we never thought to look out for.
How do you test for something like that?
So the funny thing is, we ran so much money through blood work, and then a friend of mine said, hey, why don't you do 23andMe and see what other stuff you can get out of this? And I was like, there's no way, for $99 at the time. And sure enough, the saliva work came back. I mean, you spit in this thing for 2 minutes, and it's kind of crazy.
I've done it.
Yeah. So the results come back. You can download the DNA, throw them up into something that's private called geneticgenie.org, and then it pulls all your genetic markers out. And sure enough, they match directly with the ones that were in the blood work that we spent thousands on. And so, it's there's a lot of information out there. Also, funny story. So I wanted to know more about my grandmother because she was getting really old and I knew she was going to pass. And so I convinced her that she needed to do 23andMe, and she was totally against this. She's like, do I have to have an email address? Oh, no. I mean, I created one for her, but she had no idea. So I go over there. And so about a month later, I get the results back, and I'm like, gosh, I just can't understand who these people are that have the same genetic material with her as I do. And so I go over to her house, and I'm like, Grandma, what's going on? And she goes, oh, that's my secret. And I said, not anymore. I was like, this cousin knows about it. This cousin knows about it. My brother knows about it. Like, what's going on? And she said, well, it was my brother had an affair with his secretary.
Wow.
And he goes, oh, yeah, and those are their names. And she goes, you got all that from a little bit of saliva? And I was like, yeah, scary.
Yeah, so I have a similar story. So my wife's uncle, he's 87 now, but he wasn't married or anything. This is back, 50 some odd years ago. He had one night stand or something like that, and never thought anything of it. He didn't have kids until he now has a 12-year-old daughter, which is a story in and of itself for 11-year-olds. So they do a 23andMe, and it was his nephew. His nephew does it, and there happened to be a local match. I was like, oh, this is weird. Well, then he takes it, finds out they are directly matched, and it's his daughter.
Oh!
Here's the craziest thing. So he lives on the north side of Camelback Mountain.
Yeah.
And he's an entrepreneur, owns lots of companies, that kind of thing. She lives on the south side of Camelback Mountain. They had never met before. She was, I think, 50-something when they met.
Oh, my gosh.
She also was a serial entrepreneur and thriving and had done very well for herself.
Oh, my gosh.
And they met, this is only 5 years ago. And they become, amazing friends. Like they see each other all the time and all this. But the fact that 50 years later that connected the two was insane. So my wife's like, I'm never going to take it. I don't want to know what kind of
I
stories.
have friends that say I'm not doing it either.
Yeah, I'm like, I got nothing to hide. So I took it, and it was kind of neat. And my mom's always been in that kind of stuff. So yeah. So you can actually, what was it called? Where you can do the 23andMe and
then upload it into geneticgenie.org.
Geneticgenie.org.
Yeah, GENIE.
Perfect.
It's in my book too.
Yeah. Oh, you have a book?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes, I have a book called Hello Health by Pamela Wirth, and then I have a second book coming out here shortly in the next month or two.
Cool. What's the book about?
Basically, it's got a compilation of stories from different doctors, kind of talking about integrative health and how to bring all these worlds together, as well as families that have been through some incredible stories of healing. And then I kind of weave in our own story as well.
Oh, it's kind of like a chicken soup for the soul type of thing, where it's got different stories.
It's supposed to help you not only ask questions to help yourself, but then also kind of give you some tools to, go ask your doctors about.
I love that. And where can people get it?
Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, Walmart.com, just about anywhere.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So going back to your company, your supplement company.
Yep.
Obviously, we know where the passion came from, but
Yeah.
what made you decide that I'm going to start a business doing this?
Yeah, so I used to swear to the higher power, please help my kid and I'll help humanity, and I probably should have been a little bit more careful with that, but the kid got fixed, and so now I figured after a year or two of total PTSD I needed to make good on my promise. So ended up starting to write, and then I contributed to a book confidentially, and then that didn't feel like enough. So then I ended up writing my book, and then that still didn't feel like enough, and so then I started the supplement company, and I finally feel like I've got where I need to go. Obviously, it needs to grow and continue doing more education and research. We worked on a couple of research trials with Johns Hopkins, and then it's just really, really important for folks to understand how much they can control in their own health and wellness.
Yeah, and what type of supplements do you sell?
Yeah, so predominantly for those with autoimmune and autism spectrum, although we've got people that don't have anything wrong with them that take them, and they say things like, oh, I can sleep better, I'm pooping better, I have more energy, my skin looks great. Mm-hmm. So brain, gut, and immune is really the theme. And so when you're fixing your gut, you're fixing your brain, and your immune system's automatically, coming along because your body's strong. Mm-hmm. When your immune system's weak and you catch those bacteria or viruses, you got to kill them off as fast as you can, because if they linger, they cause inflammation, which causes chronic disease, or worse, it can travel up to your brain and cause all kinds of major problems, or worse, to your heart.
Yeah, so it's specifically designed for people that had similar things going on.
Yeah. And it's amazing how much these things are really interconnected when you really start digging in. Mm-hmm. There's over 80 different autoimmune disorders, and they're all tied to inflammation. They just present themselves in different ways, and they put a name on each symptom, so then it becomes a new disorder.
Yeah.
And a new insurance code.
So for those that don't know what inflammation is, like, what is that in your body?
It's when your body's mad. Mm-hmm. Your body is just totally pissed off. You've eaten too much gluten, you feel bloated. You eat too much junk and you feel foggy. You just and your body just can't self-regulate. It's not detoxing properly. It's not absorbing your vitamins and minerals correctly. It just doesn't work.
I feel like I hear people talking about stuff all the time that really inflammation is probably the problem.
It is.
But they don't realize it. And they're sitting there, and then they'll go to the doctor, and the doctor is always, oh yeah, here's a pill to treat
which will
symptom.
give you a new symptom.
Yeah. And
so then you take a new pill for the new symptom, which then you get a new symptom.
Yeah. I like the story you were talking about with I think you said your sister-in-law and somebody from the hospital was giving you a hard time about how you were treating your kid, which, first of all, it's your kid. You should be able to do everything as long as it's ethical within how you see things, right? Mm-hmm. And if you wanted to treat them naturally, great. That's what you should be doing. But how did that all come about? Like, why were they griping at you?
Because I had told them, maybe I should keep my mouth shut more often. The pediatrician knew what was going on because he had sent me to the Children's Hospital to meet with the head of neuro. The head of neuro treats a certain way, and he consequently has hurt a lot of people, and there's a lot of stuff going on about that one. But and then the pediatrician, Harvard trained, felt very confident that he knew everything about health and wellness. Mm-hmm. But there's more and more research coming out that thankfully we're starting to learn about. And then, at family dinners or whatever, people were, kind of freaking out, like, what's wrong with the kid? Is he going to be okay? What are you doing about it? How families get overly involved.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. Like normally, I'll just shut my mouth a little more because they don't need to know everything that's going on, and we're gonna raise our kids how we want to, type of thing. So, where do you want to go with Hello Health?
So at this point, I've got 7 products. There's another 25 ready to go. And then we're building out the community to help, folks that really want to connect with each other, and then speaking with doctors that really want to join into this community and provide care. So
Do you work with like a lot of naturopaths and stuff that refer
yeah,
you
it's
business?
naturopaths, or it's actually MDs and DOs and doctors that really want to get to the root of the problem, which is more integrative or functional in nature.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you mentioned earlier that you've always kind of been entrepreneurial. Because I want to dive in a little bit on starting a supplement company, because I can't imagine you just like Google start a supplement company. How did you find like the ingredients and compound, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so my background is startup, and then I've also been up to a president and COO of a publicly traded company. And so I'm used to dealing with really complex business problems. And so I just started asking around. I'm like, hey, do you know a designer? Do you know somebody that owns a supplement company I can talk to? Do you know somebody that's a formulator? Do you know somebody that knows how to get certifications for non-GMO? And what kind of manufacturing facilities are ideal, and where are they located, and why? And so I was working on this for probably a good 6 or 7 years before I actually pulled the trigger. I mean, it's been a long road.
Yeah. And where do you like get a lot of your actual minerals and vitamins?
Yeah, everything is from the U.S. except for turmeric and frankincense, which come from India, and the organic olive leaf extract, which comes from France.
Okay, cool. And you said you were a COO of a publicly traded company. What was that like? I mean, what kind of company
That was
was
the
it?
hospitality business. So
Okay.
I oversaw the ownership group, the management group, and then started a B2B2C marketplace for independent hotels, which is what leads me to believe that I can create a marketplace and a community for integrative healthcare, because it's really no different having these independent operators of healthcare versus an independent operator of real estate. So,
Right. Yeah. I just know that specific role, I mean, the CEO and the COO typically are like the two people that have the most pressure and responsibility. Did you feel any of that during that time, or?
yes, but what's interesting is I tend to dig in and just work harder when things are overly stressful, and so I just kind of just dug in and slept less. And
Yeah. But with that stress, I mean, were you taking care of yourself, or did you notice like you were?
yeah, no, I'm a big proponent of getting up early and exercising every morning.
Okay.
And then I try and bring in some meditation, yoga, and some days are easier than others. But
Yeah. What's your normal exercise look like on a daily basis?
oh, well, now that we got this new puppy, that's a whole different story. But I generally get up and go to the gym for at least an hour, and then get back.
Cool.
And I used to be really good about doing it at 4:50 to 5:30 in the morning, and the puppy has pushed me back to 6. But
Yeah. Now, are you from here originally?
I am, yeah, born and raised, and then 3rd generation actually.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where were you actually like raised at, like in?
Yeah, so Paradise Valley, like 60th and 60th in Lincoln area, Saguaro High School.
Cool. Yeah, Saguaro, they've done pretty well in football recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a Chandler High grad, so
Okay.
There's a little rivalry there.
There you go.
But no, I'm from Safford, if you know where that's at originally.
Yeah.
And moved up here, went to Chandler when I was 14, and I love this area. But yeah, you don't meet a lot of natives to begin with, but you certainly don't meet a lot of 3rd generation natives, which technically I'm not. I'm a 2nd, and then my kids are a 3rd. So you've got 4th generation.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
super
my grandma
cool.
was born here, and so her stories are kind of funny. It was basically like 19th Avenue to 7th Avenue type, right around the Washington, Roosevelt's, the President Streets. So it was really that. And they had streetcars, and at the age of 5 or 6, she would take the streetcar and to and from school. And
Isn't it amazing how Arizona's changed?
yeah.
Yeah, I had the State 48
Yeah, I
logo.
love that shirt.
So I went to school with the guy who started the company, and I had him on the podcast and just talking to him, And as we were talking about Arizona and just the beauty of it, and not because a lot of people that have never been here, they think cactus and snakes and all this kind of stuff.
I mean, where else can you drive in and out of the snow?
Exactly. You know, in fact, my mother-in-law lives in Flagstaff. It was snowing yesterday.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh yeah. And they're down here for the NASCAR races. She's like, yeah, thank goodness I'm not there. But yeah, it's just a beautiful state. So that's cool. So how can people find you? And the book we talked about, but how can people find you? And then your podcast, how can they find that?
Yeah, so podcast is Encouraging Wellness. It's on Spotify and Apple and all the other major syndications. And then the website is www.hello.health.
Okay.
And would love. And then we're on Instagram at Hello Health Nutrition, and we have lots of videos on YouTube at Hello Health Nutrition also.
Yeah, I did check out your YouTube channel. It was really cool. And I love the domain. I'm a big domain guy, but hello.health, it's the easiest thing to remember.
Good.
So,
thank you.
Well, this is awesome. Thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thank you.
Awesome, guys. Hey, I know you got a lot out of this. If you have questions for Pamela, I'm sure you can reach out through Instagram or even on the website. But check out her products and her book, and we appreciate you. We'll see you next time.